Welcome to the 2026 NCAA Women's Volleyball Rules video. In this video, we will cover the new rules for 2026 through 2027, the experimental rule for video to the bench, and referee training points of emphasis. 2 commercial logos are now permitted on the playing court. The logos can be no larger than 10 feet by 10 feet. 1 logo may be placed on each end of the playing court between the attack line and the end line. The logos may not interfere with any required court markings or boundary lines. The rule applies to logos on the playing surface within the court boundaries. It does not apply to the free zone around the court outside of the attack lines extended. There are no restrictions on NCAA, team, or conference logos, names, or abbreviations on the playing court, provided they do not obscure any required court markings or boundary lines. The rationale for the new rule is to increase revenue opportunities for institutions and to align with other NCAA sports that permit commercial advertising on the playing surface. Here is an example of legal placement of 2 commercial logos on the playing court. Logos may be placed in the free zone outside of the space between the attack lines extended. For conference tournaments and neutral sites, 1 combination conference or title event logo that includes a commercial or nonprofit logo is permitted on the playing court when located in the front zone. A combination logo shall not count as one of the 2 permitted commercial logos authorized by this rule. For Division I only, a maximum of 2 additional commercial or nonprofit logos are permitted on a combination of either the uniform, jersey, or bottoms, or any apparel used in competition, socks, knee pads, headbands, or detached sleeves. Any commercial or nonprofit logo may not exceed 4 square inches or 10 square centimeters and must not obstruct the view or placement of the uniform number. Misconduct sanctions will now remain in effect for the entire match and will not reset after a set is completed. Previously, misconduct sanctions were in effect only for the set and, as a result, did not carry over to subsequent sets. This rules change penalizes unsporting behavior and aligns misconduct penalties in women's volleyball with other sports. Sanctions for procedural reasons, also known as delay sanctions, remain unchanged and will reset after each set. If a disqualified player does not sit out the next match as required, both the head coach and disqualified player will be required to serve a 2-match suspension. If a disqualified coach does not sit out the next match as required, the head coach will be required to serve a 2-match suspension. The rationale for the rules change was to establish penalties when an individual fails to serve a rule-required suspension. The head coach is responsible for ensuring disqualified players do not participate in the next match. Jewelry may be worn above the chin only. The new rule removes size limitations on jewelry worn above the chin. The rationale for the change is to align NCAA rules more closely with other rules codes and reduce confusion and subjectivity for student athletes, coaches, and officials. All of the jewelry pictured here is now legal. The definition of what constitutes a scoring discrepancy has been modified to be an error in the recorded score. It does not include other information recorded on the score sheet. The rules change allows referees to consult the official match statistics and/or the challenge review system to resolve a scoring discrepancy. A coach is no longer required to lodge a protest for referees to resolve a scoring discrepancy. The new procedure allowed scoring issues to be addressed more quickly without requiring a protest. A coach may still protest the score if they believe the score is incorrect after a scoring discrepancy review by the referee, in case the original review was not thorough. A coach may protest other items recorded on the score sheet, such as substitutions, timeouts, or number of challenges used. Rule 9.2.4. Teams will change sides of the court only at the end of the second set. Teams will remain on the same side and will not switch sides after sets 1, 3, and 4. When teams change sides at the end of set 2, they will move directly to the new bench along the second referee sideline, including the players on the court. The players on the B side of the court, which is the right side of the second referee, will not proceed around the first referee stand to change courts. They will move directly to the new bench along the second referee's sideline. For set 5, teams may switch sides depending on the results of the coin toss. At the coin toss prior to the 5th set, the team that wins the toss may choose to serve, receive, or side of the court. Teams will remain on the respective side of the court for the 5th set. There will be no court change at 8 points in the 5th set. Rule 11.2.4 adds the option of a technical timeout protocol, which is an alternative to the current media timeout protocol. Matches may use either technical timeouts, media timeouts, or neither. Conferences will determine whether to use the technical timeout protocol or traditional media timeout protocol. Protocol for non-conference matches may be determined by the host institution or conference policy. If the technical timeout protocol is used, the technical timeout occurs when a team reaches 15 points in sets 1 through 4, irrespective of whether a team has already taken a timeout. There will be no technical timeout in the 5th set. The technical timeout is a maximum of 90 seconds, but may be reduced to 75 or 60 seconds at conference discretion. Each team is entitled to 2 timeouts per set. Team timeouts are a maximum of 75 seconds and may be reduced to 60 seconds at conference discretion. The rationale for adding the optional timeout protocol is to provide media with certainty by placing the technical break at 15 points. There have been additional rules added for screening. Many of you may recognize this rule change from USA Volleyball. Players on the serving team are not permitted to raise their hands above their head during service. This is the time from authorization, the beckon of the serve, until the ball has passed beyond the net. The rationale for the rules change is it prevents players on the serving team from obstructing the receiving team's view of the serve. It also provides the receiving players visual access to the serve. In addition, it provides a clear, observable standard to increase officiating consistency and reduce subjectivity. It also aligns with other rule sets. Based on this new language, let's take a look at the examples here. The players in the white jerseys are illegal, hands above the head during service. The player in the red jersey is legal, hands below the head. The player in the blue jersey is legal, hands on the back of the head during service are legal. For those who have been around a while, the pursuit rule has been brought back. There are slight differences from the former pursuit rule, so note the current language. What is the new rule? A player may pursue and play a ball that has crossed the net plane to the opponent's free zone over or outside the antenna after a team's first contact or block. A ball may be played back to a teammate provided the pursuing player does not cross under the net cable, or referee platform, and the ball, when retrieved, crosses the net plane over or outside the antenna on the same side of the court. The opponent may not prevent this action. The requirements for a ball to be legally pursued. A centerline fault may not be committed. The pursuing player may not cross under the net cable, or referee platform. And the ball, when returned, must cross the net plane over or outside the antenna on the same side of the court. There are also facility requirements. In order to use the pursuit rule, the following requirements must be met. The facility must have at least 2 meters, 6 feet 6 inches, of free space on each side of the court. On the bench side, there must be 2 meters of clearance between the net standard, including the padding and any supports, and the score table or other floor obstacle. On the first referee side of the court, there must be 2 meters of clearance behind the net equipment, including any portion of the net system that extends beyond the first referee's platform. New, when the pursuit rule is in effect, media equipment or personnel may not be located in the front zone. This is the area between the attack lines extended behind the first referee. Cables that are secure and do not create a safety hazard may be within the free zone, such as a cable taped to the floor for a TV camera. The rationale for the rules change is that the rule change provides more dynamics and excitement to the game by extending playable rallies. It aligns women's NCAA volleyball rules with men's volleyball rules, as well as other rule sets. Here is a video of a ball that is pursuable. In this video, the ball is passed outside the antenna, and the player in the blue jersey pursues the ball. The player goes around the pole to play the ball, so the pursuit is legal. Here is another video of a ball that is pursuable. The player in the white jersey runs around the pole to play a ball, coming from the team's first hit that has crossed the net plane to the opponent's free zone over or outside the antenna. The rules for what constitutes a centerline fault have also changed. Rule 15.2.4.2, completely crossing the center line with the foot or feet is not permitted. Completely crossing the center line with other body parts is permitted, provided there is no interference with the opponents. The rules change removes the judgment of whether there was a safety hazard created by the encroachment of an opponent as a criterion for a fault. The part of the rule that states that players may not interfere with opponents is unchanged. It is not a fault to cross the extension of the center line outside the boundaries of the court and enter the opponent's free zone, provided there is no interference with opponents. The rules change also adds center line to the categories of reviewable decisions. Head coaches may challenge whether a center line violation has occurred. Only the location of a player's foot or feet, whether it is completely across or not completely across the center line, is challengeable. Interference under the net is not challengeable. The rationale for the rules change is to provide clarity and reduce subjectivity for officials in this rule. It also aligns with the international rule for centerline. With the change in the centerline rule, let's take a moment to review what constitutes interference. Here's the actual language of the rule. It is a fault to interfere with an opponent. Interference is defined as contact that hinders an opponent's opportunity to play the ball. Inadvertent contact that does not affect an opponent's ability to make a play shall not be considered interference. As part of the discussion in the change of the centerline rule, the Rules Committee discussed the interpretation of interference under the net. The committee did not make any changes at this time, but will review interference again in the future. While it might be less subjective than safety, interference still requires officials to use their best judgment. But since it's subjective and does require judgment, whether or not there was interference is not challengeable. Interference is any action that physically prevents an opponent from making a legitimate play on the ball. What are some examples? Encroaching with a knee or an arm that contacts an opponent who is attempting to play the ball could be interference. Interference is also any action that obstructs an opponent's movement to play the ball. For example, part of a player's upper body that crosses the center line and a blocker must move around them to complete the blocking action. Important clarification. Contact between opponents is not necessarily a fault. Just because two opponents knock knees under the net, if neither of them are physically prevented or obstructed from making a play on the ball, there is no interference that occurred. But, again, a lack of contact may still lead to interference. Just being in the way is all it may take. Let's take a look at some examples of the new rule. Watch the setter on the left in the dark jersey. Her foot completely crosses the center line. In the past, this play was left to the judgment of the second referee to determine if there was interference or a safety hazard. This year, this is a center line fault as soon as the foot completely crosses the center line. Watch the defender on the left in the light-colored jersey. When the player slides, her hand crosses the center line. This is not only a fault if the second referee determines that the player interfered with the opponent. Although a player on the other side of the net notices her encroachment and even points to her, there is no interference. Distraction is not interference. However, as the play continues, a player crosses the center line with her foot. The first encroachment with the hand is not a fault, but the second encroachment with the foot is a fault. Let's watch another example. Watch the player on the right in the white jersey. Her knee crosses the center line, but her feet remain on her own side. This is not a fault unless there's interference. And one more example. Watch the player on the left in the dark jersey as she slides near the center line to save the ball. On courts like the one pictured here, it can be difficult to tell whether or not the player completely crosses the center line with a foot or feet. However, as soon as the second referee sees a foot or feet completely cross the center line, a fault should be whistled. As mentioned previously, coaches may challenge whether an opponent's foot completely crossed the center line and contacted the opponent's court. Officials will also be able to look at possible net faults while reviewing a challenge for a center line fault. Interference below the net is not challengeable. As a reminder, the following categories are part of the challenge review bundle: in, out, touch, net fault. A challenge for a centerline fault is not part of this bundle. However, if a centerline fault is challenged, the only other category that may be reviewed is net fault. Note that this is a one-way bundle. If a centerline fault is challenged, referees can look for a net fault on the review. However, if a net fault is challenged, referees cannot look for or rule on a centerline fault based on the review of the video. In this video, a player on the team in the dark jerseys contacts the net and crosses the center line. The second referee correctly calls a net fault. If the fault had not been whistled, the coach of the team in the white jerseys could have challenged a centerline fault. The second referee could look for a centerline fault and a net fault. If a net fault is challenged, the second referee may only look for the net fault or the other items in the traditional bundle, such as touch, in, out. The second referee may not look for a centerline fault. There have been two changes to challenge procedures in Rule 18.1.5. Last season, many of you experimented with a coach requesting a challenge by using the C instead of the challenge card. The Rules Committee adopted this rules change for this year. The head coach shall request a challenge by forming a C with their hands. The rationale for the change is that it eliminates issues with the challenge card being displaced and with disdainful use of the challenge card. The second change is that a challenge must be requested immediately after the play in which the challengeable action occurred. A team must request a challenge before either a team timeout or a media or technical timeout is granted. The rationale for the rules change was it improves the pace of play and speeds up the time period to request a challenge. There was one rule change adopted by the Division II, Division III Rules Committee that was not adopted by Division I. Rule 11.3.2.1 increases the number of substitutions per set from 15 to 18. The increased number of substitutions provides student athletes with more opportunities to participate. It also provides coaches opportunities to be more creative with lineups. There is one experimental rule for this year. Conferences will determine whether to experiment with video to the bench. Here are the important points of this experimental rule. Electronic transmission of live statistical data and/or live video may be transmitted to the bench area for coaching purposes. Video transmitted to the bench may not be used to show the officials an officiating decision or interpretation. There shall be no use of electronic equipment for communication purposes to and from the bench. This means that two-way communication is not permitted. Bench personnel may receive stats or videos, but cannot have conversations, verbal, text, etc., with someone not in the bench area. When not used for communication purposes, laptop computers or tablets are permitted to be used on the bench. There has been no change in techniques for officials regarding video to the bench. Officials do not need to ask what computers, tablets, or phones are being used for. If the opponent suspects this equipment is being used inappropriately, the referee will ask the head coach. If the head coach admits to using the equipment for two-way communication, an individual penalty, red card, will be assessed to the head coach. At times, the challenge review or CRS system is not available or not operating properly. We already have a signal for when video does not give indisputable evidence to confirm or reverse a call. However, officials did not have a signal announcing mechanical failure until now. In the event of mechanical failure, the second referee will single whistle, re-award the point, then place their hands in front of their sternum, followed by splaying them out. It looks just like the baseball safe signal. Here are the challenge request updates and tips that are part of the referee training. A request for a challenge must occur before the first referee is preparing to beckon for serve. This is within the window of approximately 12 seconds following the ending of the previous play until the beckon of service for the next play. Referees should not pause the tempo of the match to allow for a long discussion for a team to decide whether or not to challenge. The team either wants to challenge or play should continue. There should not be a delay while teams view any video that is sent to the bench by the experimental rule. New for this season, all challenges must be lodged before any timeout is initiated, including team timeouts or media or technical timeouts. Referees are being trained to delay accepting a timeout request in a situation where a team wins the rally immediately and then calls timeout. There's a good chance the team knew they committed a fault and didn't want the other team to challenge. If this is the case, the second referee should glance at the other team before authorizing the timeout. For a media or technical timeout, the referee should confirm with the scoreboard operator to delay the buzzer a few seconds to give the team a chance to challenge. If a team chooses to challenge, the second referee accepts the challenge. The media or technical timeout should begin. Referees need to make sure both teams are aware of the media or technical timeout is taking place. The second referee then conducts the challenge review process during the media or technical timeout. Have a great season of volleyball.